All right, thank you for staying with Citizen. We'll come to your feedback in just a bit. Keep them coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We'll sample them in just a bit. But Mans, I'll start with you on this. IEBC clash as panel moves to pick bosses. A decision by the Electoral Commission selection panel to proceed and recruit new commissioners following a court order sets the stage for a clash with the opposition after Azimio leader Raila Odinga dared the government to fill the posts and face a backlash, including return of mass protests. The court has said that the selection panel should continue with selecting the commissioners. There's a political truce through the NADCO report that suggests that this should be done differently. Which one should be followed this time around?
First, I appreciate that there's serious pressure and there's a serious problem that we don't have IEBC, you know, and everybody knows the history, how commissioners resigned. Ordinarily, we should not be having this crisis now. When a court, you know, makes a decision, it is still, you know, amenable for a quick appeal, and you can still, you know, end up back to court, up to the Supreme Court, to be able to deal with this matter. And this is a very serious public matter, and we know where the politics is. The panel may not be well balanced or may be biased. The biggest fear is political bias. And if you micromanage IEBC, then you are micromanaging the election itself. And everybody should have confidence in IEBC. So as much as the court has made a decision for progress, that court is still challengeable. And the moment you go to the higher court, you quickly, you know, get conservatory orders and you stay. So the matter of IEBC, while that happens, a lot of negotiations can happen. Parliament is involved because of the bipartisan report, which is going to be debated next week. It is urgent, and that report will give away. But again, also, when there's a matter pending before court or you have temporary orders, that's the time most of politicians or political parties can negotiate. Yeah. And that's why there was a lot of wisdom, and the Yusuf knows this. In 1997, IPPG package with Moi. And Moi always put the nation first. He will take a hard position. Then when he hears what Kenyans have to say, then he will change that position and go for truth and go for the best interest of the nation. So I believe the test is the best interest of the nation. Yeah. IEBC holds the nation together or loses the nation. And again, it's a point of making the voter, you know, aware, because the voter is the final judge. And when there is mass injustice, then the voters should overwhelm. Yeah. You know, the injustice or an IEBC which want to corrupt the election.
But as it stands, should they be shortlisted? Because the court has pronounced itself.
Well, while they go on with that process, that decision of the court, just like in the Mazayo case, it's not the final decision of the court. Somebody who is not satisfied, and we are not satisfied. We're already appealing, and we will soon change the position. Okay. Because you see that's one court. That's why you have a high court, you have a court of appeal, and you have a Supreme Court. Okay. So by the time you go through all those, all the issues have been filtered properly. Yeah. And there is a way, you know, you'll find justice in that process. Okay.
Honorable Hassan, here's another issue, under the legal issue. Should this be challenged or stick to what the court has said?
No, I think this is where I fully agree with the courts. You know, this is a major constitutional issue. Yeah. The IEBC is a constitutional body, a very important legal institution, crucial for the health and well-being of our democratic process and system. Yeah. And it's completely paralyzed. Without commissioners, there is no IEBC. You just have a shell of bureaucrats. So the court's decision is correct. I think it is absolutely necessary. We're already facing a major challenge because there's an important deadline approaching, which if we don't address now, would create a constitutional crisis because by-elections cannot be done. Secondly, the boundary delimitation review is due. It's 12 years now, but this March it will be 12 years. So it's a question that we need to address very quickly. It doesn't mean that, in fact, we're going to discard the deliberations of the National Dialogue Committee. It just means that the courts are saying these things are urgent and they must be done.
Yeah.
And I think because we already have a political process, they should move with speed to be able to address the court's decision and come to bring the issue to Parliament so that we can deliberate and fix this particular problem before it becomes a constitutional crisis.
But we know in this country perception is bigger than reality. Should these candidates be shortlisted as they are? Will people really trust the process, considering...
No, I think if you look, the best thing that has happened to this country was that, in fact, the leadership of this country, and this is the great thing about Kenya. There are many countries that have political crises that eventually explode into conflict, and the country tilts over into civil war or a long-running political conflict. And one of the great things about Kenya, if you look at the East African, at the Africa region, is that at every moment when we have had a crisis in which people thought, oh, this country is going to the dogs, we have a political elite that has the wisdom to pull back. And so we have pulled back from that crisis. We have the national dialogue process. All these things have been discussed. There is nothing new. They have made some important recommendations. We're just saying that we should not be held hostage to a political process that may not be concluded. And the court's decision is actually forcing the hand of the political elite by saying, look, guys, this is not an issue that can wait. We must act on it now. And it is right. I think this is one place where the courts are needed and where they're coming in to say, guys, look, we're on the verge of a constitutional problem. Fix it. Yes.
Okach, which one should we follow? A political truce or the judicial directive?
Of course, once the courts have spoken, we have to comply with that. However, I agree with the Senator that the courts have the chains of appeal. I don't know if there is a notice of appeal that was filed or is being pursued. And once you file that, you seek stay. And unless you have stay, then this particular panel has no other choice but to proceed. Otherwise, they will be in contempt of court. But the moment there is a stay, and that is what the people who are opposed to them proceeding should do, including the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Without that, then he would actually be doing what they are castigating the government of, that you should respect court orders, you should abide by court orders. The courts are the ones that deal with these matters, and we are bound by that. So they will actually be speaking from both sides of the mouth. However, when you look at this, there is also another reality that still politics informs a lot of these things. In law schools, we were told that man made law. Law did not make man. So we create it, and it has to accustom to our needs, which changes daily. So with the reality that we have today, and it's something that we learned from the past, with that IPPG lesson, we got one of the best elections until now. The 2007 had issues. But at this particular point, the choice of a referee, you will see even in the finals of the African Cup of Nations, that whoever is chosen as a referee, of course, matters a lot. Even if they had chosen someone and this person was initially maybe was a Nigerian citizen, you'll find that has to change, because there must be trust in the referee. We are at a point where not only do we have issues with the referee, but it will be very bad when we have an issue with the VAR referee. The VAR referee here is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is already, there are already assertions that it's already captured by the same people who would actually be protagonists there. So the moment you have a problem, both from the referee, secondly to the VAR referee, the Supreme Court, it means it is chaos. So it is important, as much as this is happening, and that's why I will pray that if what Manzo is indicating, let them appeal, get a stay. Then they deal with this. But remember, Trevor, the right for representation is fundamental. No one can change that because it is fundamental in the Constitution. There are people who do not have representatives today. If something happens today, because elections can take place any day, even for the highest offices, it is envisaged under the Constitution. So we do not have even this referee in place. It will be a constitutional crisis. The issue of boundary delimitations, I can tell you it will not happen. We already passed that deadline because 1 month, what will you do? You've not even reconstituted. The issue of delay, even if you want to marry it with a political truce or a political process, you cannot hold hostage the country for this long. From April last year to today, they already had that Kamini handshake at Bomas. Why haven't they implemented that? And starting with this part where they had already agreed, which does not require them to have a referendum. Why haven't they done so? So we might be looking at, and that is what the court was looking at it, political expediency might be okay, but should not be to a point that you actually risk the very nation that the Constitution is supposed to protect.
Yeah, but are we unnecessarily delaying the people with the political conversation?
Oh, this matter is extremely urgent for everyone. I remember we have quite a number of MCAs who have rested. We have, I think, 2 members of parliament where you have months have gone, you know, without representation in the House. And that creates a lot of anxiety. Even, you can imagine a member of parliament is oversight, CDF, and many things. So how is that constituency operating without a member of parliament? And when they have issues of water, drought, or floods, that constituency is abandoned. And there is no mechanism of an MP active for another or for a deceased MP. So this is extremely urgent for everybody. But as much as it is extremely urgent, it arises out of a crisis of resignation of commissioners. So we need to address the core and then move very fast, whether in court, whether in deliberations, to make sure that IEBC commissioners are in place as soon as possible. And you can see the court did not give them a timeline, a definite time. The court didn't say by this or that. So it means that there are loose ends somewhere. And it is in the interest of the country that we get an IEBC we all agree on. The referee is extremely important. You know, many people don't know when Olympics are going on or football is going on. For every decision a referee does, there is a panel of judges somewhere, you know, sorting out these issues quickly. You know, even if there's a system of sorting disagreement in a match. When football is going on, sometimes the referee was wrong. and they have a system, quickly and even when the referee is wrong, they correct, and even they have cameras and they replay, and, you know, results change. Because these results mean a lot. So we want those judges to move very fast. We want the people who are resolving conflicts to move very fast so that the country moves on.
Honorable Hassan, I want to move on to a different conversation. Let's now call it just the state of the nation, because it's a combination of many things. When you look at the front page of the Standard, they're saying cheap loans, forget it, after CBK hikes its base lending rate. This is the highest in 14 years. In 2020 it was 7, came all the way to 7.5 in 2022, 2024, now it's at 13. So it means everybody who has a loan, it's going to increase. At the same time, the front page of the Daily Nation, half of Kenyans in debt crisis without a pay rise in 5 years. Nearly half of all Kenyans have reported financial stress amidst income stagnation since 2019, forcing many of them to pile up debt. That's according to a new survey. At the same time, the Director General says that in 2022-2023, 147.3 billion shillings was spent without the National Assembly's approval. Are we seeing a situation where the government is simply insensitive to the people's needs, and are Kenyans just on their own, every man for himself, as the looting continues in different spheres?
Well, I think there are 2 aspects to the question that you have raised. One aspect is, of course, we have a serious economic problem. I mean, we have a history of overspending, heavy internal debts, which is something that has been going for a while, but is coming to boil now, and we're facing it directly, and this has consequences to the economic well-being of citizens as well as to the economy. So that's one aspect which I think we have not come to terms with. The second aspect is the issue of problems of global issues, the depreciation of the Kenyan shilling, which has again has a very adverse effect. But my concern is the fact that although we are facing these serious economic problems, and I think this raising the lending rate to 13% is going to affect a lot of the middle class, people who have mortgages, people who have loans. Who are
currently burdened by different taxation
small businesses,
yes, that has now also increased.
So this would be a big blow to that particular sector of the economy, and it would have adverse effects as well in the economy. But my concern is the fact that the government is not acting on the concerns that it has raised economically. For example, in terms of expenditure, is that foreign travel is still very prevalent, excessive use of funds, wastages and leakages continue, and the issue of corruption. Yeah. So I think the government cannot have its cake and eat it unless it is able to stream down, cut costs, and show this country, in fact, that it is concerned about the economic burdens and the pressures that have been brought upon the Kenyan people. So there's a contradiction. Yeah. I hear the president saying the right things. You know, we're going to crack down on expenditure. We're going to fight corruption. But in reality, there is no a visible action on the part of the government to show that, in fact, they are cutting down, that, in fact, we are beginning to live within our own means. And this is an issue of a great concern for me, because I don't see how the government can really turn things around unless it acts on what it's preaching. You know, there's a very big contradiction in that. And a clear example is the massive travel expenses of the various ministries that we've had, the wastages that we're hearing, and the illegality of drawing money from the Treasury without the approval of Parliament. That obviously is a very serious concern. If that is the case, and it can be proven, then that's a major violation.
It is the case. This is from the Auditor General report.
But this is several years. The Auditor General is not talking about 2024 or 2023.
Actually, she is. She's talking about 2022, 2023. That's
she's up to date with
7 billion was spent.
She is up to date with the auditing.
Yeah, and she says it's from the Treasury, Health and Education. I
think this is an issue that we would definitely raise and address in Parliament. Okay. And it will be obviously a subject matter for the committee, the parliamentary committee that deals with that issue. Right. But it's also a serious concern for everyone to have a government that is not following the constitutional process in terms of finance. Yeah,
Manza, I'm relating all these three things because the people are suffering on one side. 5 years down the line, they haven't gotten any pay rise anywhere. The taxes have increased. Now the base lending rate for all loans have increased at a time when there was promise that there will be cheaper loans because the government was meant not to borrow here. But when you look at the government operation, nothing has changed. Billions still being splashed in travel, expenditure. In fact, there's also the favored and the forgotten in different counties here. Money being withdrawn without approval of National Assembly. Is this a systems problem, or is the government just simply insensitive to the people's needs?
First of all, in my own opinion, we have a government with a lot of indisciplined officers, including indisciplined leaders of majority in the houses, and indisciplined ministers. And when that trend goes
on... It's a case of indiscipline across board.
Yes, it's a case of indiscipline, negligence, failing to, lack of professionalism. You see, we have a very good Minister of Finance, and he's a serious professional, but I don't think whatever advice he gives is followed by anyone. You see, you don't force the rates to control international trading, to control the dollar. We are very lucky. There's no drought. If drought had continued, I don't know what Kenya will do. We are very lucky also. we have a state which is peaceful. If there were all those mandamanos going on, we would not be having tourists here. It's, you know, it is tourism which really brings the dollar here. You know, foreign exchange and foreign trade. We are importing, you know, more than we are exporting. Our tea and coffee, you know, has gotten into cartels and macadamia and so many other things, the nuts. You know, we need to be trading. We are receiving, so we are receiving more. We are paying out, you know, more dollar than we are receiving, and that's part of the problem. And I think the experts in Treasury and in a central bank should be able, you know, to use science and to use economics to deal with these issues. So you cannot make a decision which fixes the borrowers. Then it means many more people are going to be auctioned, and they are going to be auctioned to who? It means that if you have loans and you were paying for mortgage and you are unable to pay, then even when you want to sell the house so that you can recover, there's no one to buy. Yeah. And then you have an economy which is totally stuck. So the biggest problem is corruption in this country. We are losing more money in corruption than people can work for. And then the systems to check corruption are not be strengthened at all. You know, if it is ESCC and the investigative bodies, they should be empowered. They should have enough resources. They should extend to the counties. They are not devolved. So you have few officers overloaded without proper facilitation. So the fight against corruption, really. And it is a matter of ethics also. You see, for us to fight corruption, we must even teach children that the corrupt practices and theft of public resources is a dangerous thing. Just like one member of parliament asked, you grab public property now. Everybody knows it is public land. Then 50 years to come, when there will be new government, new people, and the records are still showing your property is on public land, what will happen? It means then that government those days will tell you to either pay up for the value or they demolish your property. So we need to be futuristic, and we need to grow a culture of you know, protecting what belongs to the people. And this corruption issue must really be tackled. But unfortunately, it's at the highest now, where even court orders are being disobeyed, and the people are looting left, right, and center. And they are not being arrested, and nobody can charge them, and the property cannot be recovered right now. Then we are going to have a worse economy if we don't check on corruption.
Okay. Okachi, what are your views on this? Because, you know, the reason why I'm asking whether this is a systems problem is because it's not just this government. We've seen this sort of travel by CSs, foreign travel, all the time. It's not just this government alone. But is it really necessary, or is it just a broken systems problem where there's many loopholes where money goes, whereas systems to ensure that the people are taken care of are not given the emphasis it deserves? For example, if it's as simple as the base lending rate goes up, it means the people, the ordinary mwananchi, is struggling.
Indeed, Trevor, that you've actually given the answer in your question, because I agree with the Manzo. It's just bad manners. It's people not aligning to the systems that are there. We have proper processes. We have laws. In fact, we always say we have more legislation than is necessary. But in terms of that, you need a good manners. You need someone fidelity to actually your particular role. But in this country, I think it's a position of you get into that position and it's your turn to eat. And that becomes a problem. And no matter how much politicians make noise from the outside, the moment they go inside within a second, and we've seen...
They start traveling.
Yeah, we've seen Manzo's side in what they normally call, you know, the handshake government. There was Nusumkate. We saw what they did. So we don't know who else will get to go and do that miracle once they get into government. Unfortunately, these are the people we have, and it's a reflection of our society. However, when you look at the reality of the day-to-day, you still have the government to blame. This is a government that was voted in telling Kenyans they have a plan. Yeah. It is their turn to implement that plan. As much as, yes, there are extraneous reasons why some of these things are happening, unfortunately, you told Kenyans, we have a plan. And that plan must have envisaged all these other extraneous issues. So Kenyans are there and they want to see. And that's why you are told the base lending rate, like you say, affects everyone, not even hustlers or the ordinary Mwananchi, everyone, because there are a lot of things which are pegged on the base lending rate. But unfortunately, with the realities that Yusuf is telling us in terms of the economy, the government is doing the total opposite in terms of what it should be doing to mitigate. We are seeing tolls, levies every day introduced. We are seeing, like we are being told, the road levy is now going to be introduced in several, for several roads. And you are now being told that with this dwindling economy, the president is busy telling Toyota to come and manufacture, zero mileage cars here. Who is going to afford those cars? Where are you going to drive them when you are being taxed left, right, center for those? You are being told even your ID will expire, your citizenship will expire, and you'll have to pay everything. In fact, it is a point where people are saying we are lucky the government is not, are not leaders in church, because they would actually review even the tithe that we pay from 10% to be higher. So it's a bad situation with the government not mitigating on this side, so that at least you are at par with the common citizen and their problems.
But even as this is happening, Honorable Yusuf, are you concerned with the where these travels really are? Now let's zero down into the travel, because we can see it on the Daily Nation here, the favored and the forgotten. It turns out that cabinet secretaries have toured 4 regions: Rift Valley, Coast, Eastern and Central. Is this where the problem really lies? Because most people have this perception that when a certain leader goes into power, then almost all other government issues are channeled towards the region where they come from. Is that the reflection of what we're seeing here? 358 visits to Rift Valley, 175 to the Eastern region, 141 to Central, 246 to Coast, but then there are other places like Northeastern, for example, that has the least, and it has always been marginalized all this time.
Well, I do. I think it doesn't paint a good picture of the government, and particularly in its the way it does its functions, and whether it is a fair, non-discriminatory. And also, it's quite shocking that one of the most underdeveloped regions that have suffer considerably from drought, from floods, from extreme violence, and so on, is getting so little attention. I think that is really a big concern and an issue of worry. I would say that this obviously reflects the government's priorities, but the government priorities seems to be misplaced in this particular case, because there is not a part of Kenya that does not require development or assistance from the government. And I think a good government is the one that makes sure that, in fact, there is a fair, just, and an equitable system across the country. It doesn't matter how you voted. Once a government comes into office, it is the government of every Kenyan. Yeah. And I think that is the message that I've had repeatedly from the president. So obviously this particular chart, this distorted representation and visits by government ministers is something that must be addressed and dealt with, so that all Kenyans can enjoy the fruits of development.
Okay, but Manzo, are we giving this the attention that it deserves, or are we simply just splitting hairs there? Is this a reflection of government priorities, or just simply leveraging on competitive advantage? I mean, they're going to the places that can grow the most, or what is going on here based on this skewed travel?
You see, this chart tells you what happens with the continuous campaign. You know, in Kenya, campaigns never stop. The current government started a campaign the day it was sworn in. And this is aggressively try to look at the, regions where it is the votes, it's rich vote, and you can get more votes than to where there isn't. And it is a way of trying to please those particular, areas, so that you want to remain intact in the next election. And then you abandon areas you think they don't have much vote, or you were not supported largely. And I can assure you I participated in some of these ministerial tours. They're simply political. It's not work. It's coming to campaign and carrying a whole team. And there's an expense, and even shippy people to come for a meeting, pretending that it is public participation or consultation, or you are taking development to the people, or you are inspecting a project. And I think we have a lot of wastage in government in terms of, you know, those cars fueled, you know, helicopters. I have no problem when they save time and they make the helicopter-owning companies rich and pay the pilots and that. But it should be when it is absolutely necessary and properly timed, so that you don't fly an helicopter and you go and achieve very little.
Yeah.
By the time you do that expense and all the people you ship with you, if it is a job you can still complete while at your office, why not so? And a lot of time you are going to visit a dead project or a stalled project which has not moved, and you have not offered a solution upon visiting that particular project. So it's more of ministers, and they're doing it even today, yesterday and the day before. This is happening especially with the health and the new health laws. They are pretending that they are doing public participation or consultation. It doesn't have a proper basis in law, but when I attended, I realized it's a campaign strategy, and try to market these new laws. And when they get feedback from the people, the feedback is not brought back again to the law. The law is still passed through Parliament the way it was. So what's the use of visiting the people? Why don't you just pass it? And we face each other in the courts? So some of these visits are really totally unnecessary. There are things you can implement through the people you have on ground. We have county commissioners, we have all the systems in place, so that there's a lot of wastage in government. And I wish we can use this money for development. It will make the country a better place.
Hassan, you wanted to add something before I bring
I think that apart from the visits, for example, it says 1,377 visits in Nairobi, but I can tell you as a member of Parliament from the Eastlands, we haven't received any visits from government ministers for the last 6 or 7 months. Maybe they come by.
But they're centered here. So
but what I'm saying is, my main issue is that even when the president is traveling, the president has you know, responsibility to travel and do certain things as a head of state. The concern is the entourage. You know, as he's traveling now around the country, it seems that almost every minister, every principal secretary, every official goes with him. And these are people who are paid fuel, accommodation, allowances, and so on. It hangers on. So the cost accumulates. And even with foreign travel, if you look at the number of who are traveling, and for example, when I was based in the UN headquarters, when I was working in New York, there's this annual events where heads of states, top dignitaries of countries come. When you look at the Kenyan delegation, the entourage is always one of the biggest that attends some of these gatherings. And even when there is no seating in the conference for that delegate, they stay in the hotels, they take daily allowances, they add on the expenditure. But they are of no value to the actual process. And I think that is an issue that we should be looking. When one says the minister so-and-so is traveling around the world, you should look at how many people are traveling with that minister. So that is the problem. I'm not saying that our cabinet secretaries or our government leaders should not travel for business. They can do that when it is necessary. But they should also be aware of our limitations in the sense that we are a country that can hardly afford that foreign currency and that expenditure. And that money could go to paying our debts or to building projects that can change the lives of our citizens. So,
Okach, you know, we've addressed whether this travel is necessary or unnecessary, but now there's a further breakdown of where the destination really is. Are you concerned that this seems to be skewed, or are we just splitting hairs here? People are allowed to go wherever they want.
Trevor, constitutional architecture and framework that we have envisages that development will actually spread across the entire country without discrimination in any manner whatsoever, regardless of who you voted for, political affiliations, and all that. However, the reality that we have seen is that when the president goes somewhere, he actually carries a bag of goodies. And that is why people have always said, let the president come. To this extent, you then find that the question that we should be asking ourselves is, and that is what I would have wanted to see or further from this particular indication, is that the visits that they are saying, these are the places that have received visits, how has it translated to development? What has it brought? So that we can say these are not just, we can complain. We don't want to just have visitors for the sake of having visitors. Because when visitors just come to your home, you must change the meal that you wanted to have that day. It is expensive. Yeah. But if they have come with something, then you can actually tangibly say there's a benefit. At this point, from the indication here, there's no benefit. However, Trevor, you must juxtapose that with the reality that there's a fight in this country whereby there are proponents who say there is the 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling aspect. So that we have proportional benefit to the creators of wealth in this particular country, so that you actually get a percentage of what you have created. There's always that argument, and there's an argument that we do away with all this and just divide it. So you can find that as much as these visits are there, and I agree with Senator Manzo, it is to an extent linked towards the 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling aspect. And there must be benefits that are coming with these visits. And when we now have an itemization of the benefits, that is when people in northeastern region can actually say, no, there's discrimination here. We also need to be remembered. But without that, we then cannot actually fit it. We'll miss where to fit this particular argument.
Okay, let me bring up some feedback and see what you're saying, and then get your reaction on the feedback of every day, and then we take closing remarks as we wind up on the State of the Nation discussion. Let's see what you're saying. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's put that up on screen. Now, Godi Baraza says the halting of school fees payment via eCitizen is a good move. This gives parents who pay their school fees through non-monetary items like cereals, firewood, and livestock an opportunity to get their children in school. Okay? Sawe says it's troubling how Kenya Kwanza selectively embraces judgments that favor them and dismisses those that don't. It's a high time they recognize the supremacy of the rule of law and honor all judgments, regardless of their stance. Respect for judgments is crucial. Okay? Bobo Tieno says, from 1997 IPPG with the defunct ECK to current IEBC Kenya, Isaac must go, and Bukati too. Nothing will change even if NADCO recommendations is adopted in recruitment of new commissioners. We'll just follow the system of former ones. Okay. Samuel Wood says that the law is very clear how IEBC commissioners should be recruited. When Handshake Brothers appointed Cherera 4, there was no crisis. When DP Ruto raised the issue, BBI Brigade heckled at him. Okay? Gadua Gashora says the government is in a rush to seize control of public funds without a clarity and well set out policy and legal framework for effective resource management. Kenya Kwanza initiatives are murky. They are themselves baffled. Their pace is unsettling and suspicious. Okay? Timothy Kitur says, as the Kenya Kwanza government fought corruption, that the only corrupt institutions remaining are schools. If it's about corruption, let the president deal with corruption at the executive first. Okay? Engineer Lazaro says, honorable members were between the rock and a hard place, obeying court orders and common sense. Building credible IBC can't be left at the hands of one political player. No, that's the only way to deal with the cycle of post-election chaos. J.M. Musoma says, tell Kamkunji MP that not all parents have mobile phones or know how to use e-money platforms. How do you tell a student whose parent works menial jobs like fetching water or building bricks to pay fees in kind? Let's just standardize school fees models. Okay? Evans Sonyela says, I think the current government is not properly advised, or the advisors are on holiday. How will a parent who pays school fees in kind be able to pay it through eCitizen? Okay. Some closing remarks, and I'll start with you, Honorable Yusuf. Closing remarks.
Well, I think it is important for us to move on as a modern state to improve how our citizens can participate in national affairs digitally, as well as in terms of payment. I think e-citizen should be improved if there are problems. But I would say that, in fact, we are going through a very difficult economic environment. We're getting into more structural adjustment type of programs. Yeah. And I think maybe it would be a good thing if the government came clean on that by giving Kenyans a clear picture of the real status of our economy. Because this bit-by-bit introduction of issues like increasing the interest rates to the highest number is not good for our economy. It's not good for our citizens. And I think there must be some clarity of how do we get out of this deepening economic crisis. Yeah. I think that is a big concern for every Kenyan. Not only the taxes. I mean, people have to pay taxes in some ways, but where are we heading economically? Mm-hmm. Are we heading the right direction? And when would we reach the balancing point where our economy can come up again? What is the prognosis? Yeah. Because at the moment, things don't look very well.
As a veteran member yourself, Parliament resumes on the 13th, which is next week. Where should your priorities lie?
Our priorities should be, in fact, I would say, deal with the serious constitutional issues like the IEBC. Yeah. I think the National Dialogue Committee report must be submitted so that we can deal with it, because our problems have always been political. And so we should not run into any constitutional crisis on the issue of the IEBC. We should go ahead, make some decisions that would clear the way so that people know where they're heading. For example, in the issue of representation, the people of Banisa in Mandera have had a member of parliament for 1 year this next month. 1 year. They haven't had no representation whatsoever. I think that is not acceptable. We should not be heading to a crisis in that sense. We should resolve the issue of IEBC and the selection of the commissioners as quickly as possible. Yeah. Attorney General says on the housing bill, you should have also involved the Senate. Do you agree? Yes, because much of the land that is owned by the counties is going to be used for affordable housing. So I think it is just fair that both houses of parliament should deliberate on it. Okay. Honorable Manzo, yes, where should the priorities lie as you resume on the 13th before you give us your closing remarks?
Yes, IBC is a priority. Laws which reduce the cost of living for Kenyans, and I like it that now the government and listening to the advice of the Attorney General is very experienced. When he was Speaker, he will always make sure that what's supposed to go to Senate goes to Senate to avoid court cases and litigation and the waste of time. I think the issue of poverty now is very serious, and the gap between the rich and the poor is increasing. The reality at the rural setting, that's why, we have the local secondary schools there, so that for parents who want their children to go to day school can do so. There's so much poverty, such that a lot of times parents pay school fees in kind. I'm aware of parents who take maize and beans to school, and that is converted into cash. Others firewood, others, that level. Others really can't pay at all, have to be given bursaries.
How does the school use that stuff?
Instead of buying...
If you give the head teacher a chicken.
No. It's not, if you buy it...
Is he going to eat it, or is it going to the school account?
You see some of the boarding schools the children have to eat. So in those schools, this maize and beans which has been brought by parents, it is now calculated. The head teacher would still have gone, or the board would still have gone to buy in a shop, even buy more expensive. We are saying that absolute poverty should be dealt with. And first of all is making sure that the cost of living is not as dangerous as it is now, so that the lowest people in the country the so-called hustlers can survive. There's a very big problem of parents taking children to school currently. And it is a very big problem to members of parliament because even the bursaries are not there. So we have to make sure that the Kenyans stop this suffering, and especially children go to school, because it is education which is the hope of many families and which equalizes people. And the moment you play around with the e-citizens and you cause confusion in education, you are going to cause confusion into a lot of Kenyans and a lot of pain. And I think this government did not come to power to mistreat Kenyans. We are all servants of the people. We are not bosses. We need to serve the people correctly. We need to follow the constitution. We need to obey court orders. And let me finish with say that I listened to Francis Ole Kaparo, the former speaker, for 15 years. He was, other than the colonial speaker, Sir Humphrey Slade, Kaparo was the longest serving speaker. And he went on to say that while addressing law students, while setting up an LLM course at the Catholic University Law School, that everybody must obey the law. And the Constitution and the laws are not here by accident. He also insists Parliament must play its role. Speakers must also do their job above board, because the speaker is not aligned. The speaker is neutral for the benefit of the country. And I found a lot of wisdom in Honorable Francis Ole Kaparo, that we must all follow the law. The president must obey the law. The court orders must be obeyed. We must also follow the public, the procurement law and the finance laws in this country. There is a reason these laws are there. But if all of us don't follow the constitution, don't follow the law, then the country will resort into anarchy. Okay. And I think it's very, very important we listen to people who have served this country and are senior citizens and can be able to guide the country.
Okay. Okach, from an outsider's perspective, looking in, Parliament resumes on the 13th. What should be top of their list, as you also give your closing remarks?
Yes, Trevor, I agree with my co-panelist here that, of course, top of the list will be the IEBC issues, of course, the Bomas document, so that these can propel the country and remove us from the constitutional crisis that can actually disintegrate this country, and will also be in compliance with the court orders. But over and above that, Trevor, this is the time that the budget-making process will actually commence. Trevor, it is important that they also have pro-poor policies that will actually be inculcated in the budget itself, so that we do not also have other bills which again would actually burden Kenyans as we go towards the next financial year of the government. Trevor, the issue that also they should look at is the aspects of accountability. We have seen what Article 223 has done to the country. We are now saying that we are auditing indeed the past expenditures. The nation has an indication that we have borrowed over 450 billion, I think, in the last 4 months. What are we doing with these monies based on what we are seeing and the pilferage that is there? So we cannot just be going and looking back, but we are not also assessing ourselves in terms of even what we are now borrowing and ensuring that it is utilized. Parliament is a watchdog, and it is our eyes. It has to play that role. Otherwise, we will complain here about the economy, left, right, center, and the common mananchi, who are the electorates, will feel the pinch, and then we'll be saying they cannot even afford to pay school fees or even afford these phone calls. A good idea, as I finish, can always lead to a better idea if there is proper consultation, proper inclusion, proper participation. The government must listen to that. The Waishimiwas who are who actually supervise this particular government must ensure that they repeat that until they know. You can have the best idea to yourself, but when we cut it across the board for between the four of us, we'll have the best idea, which all of us will be happy, no complaints about.
No. This morning, Honorable Youth as a Member of Parliament for Kapunji, Honorable Dan Manzo, Senator for Makueni, and Dan Kanokata, the High Court, for speaking to us this morning on the State of the Nation. And thank you all for all the feedback that you sent through on the State of the Nation. We talk about matters, politics, and everything in between there. Thank you so much. My name is Trevor Mbija. Coming up next is Cooking Tips. All right? See you later.
They have said, Mheshimiwa,